back so you can ask questions. I want to recognize Judon and Chris and commend both of you for taking up the mantle to run for a very important position at the city. The city comptroller is a very important position. And Judon, you probably remember I sued when I was the city attorney. I was the one who sued the comptroller in order to make sure that the city government ran efficiently. So it's a very, very important position. Thank you all so much for running for that position. I want to recognize my dear friend, the former police chief, and I agree we're the best police chief that we've had in this city, and thank you so much for your service. And Peter Brown, how could we ever go without recognizing you and your services to this great city? I want to thank all of you for being involved in this political process. Let me dispel immediately any doubt about my party affiliation. If you read Wikipedia, somebody has gotten delirious on Wikipedia and said that I was a Republican. I'm not. Never have been. And I want to make sure that you don't have any illusions about that. I have always been a lifetime Democrat. I am today. I find no reason to change, and I'm not seeking to change. And so let me ask the second part. Why am I a Democrat? I believe that this party tolerates differences and is a more tolerant and accepting party, as opposed to a judgmental. And you still understand that you're part of the family, and that's the way I always understood the Democratic Party to be. And I welcome division and difference, because we all know that we're about one task, and that is seeking the enhancement of justice for all. We take seriously that proclamation, justice for all. Why am I running for mayor? I can tell you it's not a fun sport. It is in fact a blood sport. But this city has done so much and given so much to so many. My wife and I, when we came to Houston, Texas, we literally did not have a penny. We had $130,000, Judon, in debt. We couldn't even make a mortgage payment, could not even buy a house. This city embraced us, gave us an opportunity that we probably could not have achieved anyplace else. She was open to us, people were accepting, people gave us a fair shot at success. And as a result, over the last 28 years, God has given us a measure of success in this city. Some of you may not know that I actually am a businessman and operate 4 different businesses. Some people like to recognize that I'm a trial lawyer, or a lawyer only. We have to live with that sometimes. But I'm also a businessman that has operated 4 successful businesses. One is a TV station, and if you don't know, I want you to join in. It's KCOH TV. It's a new television station that we've created. Number 2, I actually own, my wife and I own KCOH Radio, which is the oldest black-owned radio station in Houston, Texas, 63 years old. You're looking at the proud owners of that radio station, and if you don't know, we're at 12:30 a.m. on the dial, 24 hours a day. Love to have you as a listener. Number 3, I actually own a real estate company where we own multiple pieces of property in the city of Houston and throughout Texas, and we've operated those very successfully for the last 20 years. And then finally, I am a trial lawyer, and I've done that for 28 years. But let me tell you the kind of cases I've worked on, just so you can say, hey, I've heard from Ben Hall, and these are the kind of cases he worked on. The cross-burning case out in Katy, where some kids and grown people took it upon themselves to burn a cross in the front yard of this African-American family. I'm the lawyer who filed that lawsuit, stopped the cross burning, and got for recovery. When James Byrd was dragged to death in Jasper, Texas, the NAACP called my law firm to prosecute a case against the Ku Klux Klan and the racists who actually dragged his body. We were successful in telling them that we could do that, undertake that task, but at the end of the day, there would be no one alive to pay the judgment. I remember going to Jasper, Texas, and having the sheriff actually stop me there and tell me as I entered into Jasper, Mr. Hall, I know you're here to do a good cause for the NAACP, but I can't guarantee your safety. I I cannot guarantee that once you drive outside the city limits that you will be protected. Those are the kind of cases that I've worked on, and I'm proud of that history. One final case that I'm proud of, and that is the CES case just a few years ago on Griggs Road. A black neighborhood was being poisoned to death by CES Environmental. No one would step up and take that case. That case walked into my office, and we were proud to represent 200 families to get them compensation for their homes that were then valueless at the time. So if anyone asks you what kind of lawyer Ben Hall has been, I want you to know that. Now, why are we here? And hopefully I can share with you my visions for the city of Houston. One of the questions that you have to ask, I would assume, is what type of mayor does this city need? Just say that question one more time. What type of mayor does this city need? I submit to you that there are three qualities that each mayor must have: integrity, independence, and success. Integrity. You should have a mayor with unquestioned integrity. Anyone who is challenged at that level does not deserve the trust that that office deserves. In 28 years, you'll track back and find that in 28 years, Ben Hall's integrity has never been questioned. Never. In fact, I have the highest ethical rating of trial lawyers in the United States, and that's recognized as voted on by other lawyers. Martindale Hobel votes on us, has lawyers, our strangers, our opponents, vote on us to see whether or not we are ethical. And you can imagine, we don't all love each other. But luckily, for the last 28 years, my opponents have all voted unanimously. You have to have it unanimously. All voted unanimously. Ben Hall has the highest ethics of a trial lawyer or a lawyer in the United States. I'm very proud of that. You can look it up on the internet and you'll find it. It's in Martindale Hobel. In my business practices, you will not once find anyone who will say that Ben Hall took advantage of a partner, stole money from anyone, because that's just not the way we do business. And then one final thing I should tell you is that I'm an ordained minister, and I've been ordained for 43 years. And preach occasionally. I may bore you if you come, but I have some great preachers in this city, but I'm also an ordained minister. Let me then talk to you about independence. I have found, when I was a city attorney, some of you may know I used to be the city attorney for the city of Houston under Bob Lanier. And for about 3 years, I was the lawyer who gave them all the advice about what was legal and what could be done under the law in this city. Bob Lanier, I recall, having the question about affirmative action, because at that time there was a contest as to whether we should retain affirmative action policies at the city. Thank God I had the opportunity to defend the affirmative action ordinance, and that was upheld in the court of law. I'm the lawyer, the city attorney, who actually defended and protected affirmative action in this city back in 1992. I'm proud of that accomplishment, and I do it again today because I think that everybody deserves a fair opportunity to participate in city contracts and in all contracting opportunities throughout the city. The independence of the mayor must be the ability to tell your friends no and your enemies yes when it's the right thing to do. One thing you must be careful about is watching those candidates who suddenly are supported by so many insiders that you have to ask the question, are they independent enough to stand up against even their friends and do the right thing for the city? I believe that you'll find, if you ever go on Google and track down Ben Hall, you'll know I generally have been found to be a very independent trial lawyer. No one will ever tell you that I'll take a position just because it's my friend who takes that position. I do it because it's the right thing to do. And I'm even willing to change my policy position if I'm wrong. You should ask your candidates, are they willing to do that? The ultimate test must not be my own personal agenda. The ultimate test must be the betterment and improvement of this collective city that we call Houston, Texas. That's the kind of mayor I pledge to you I will be. Finally, well, let me go back to the independence issue, because sometimes I actually get to speak with my Republican brothers and sisters in the city as well. And they ask me, Ben Hall, you are a Democrat. How can we trust you? Sometimes I come to my Democratic brothers and sisters and they say to me, Ben Hall, you appear to be a Republican. How can we trust you? I must be doing something okay because I'm trying to communicate with all Houstonians as opposed to just a label. That's the kind of mayor I intend to be. So my priorities as your mayor. I give you 3 P's. Potholes. I guess everybody's talking about potholes. Right? Pensions. You've got to address those 2 issues before you ever get to anything else, and that is policing. So my three P's are policing, potholes, and pensions. Let me tell you about those 3. It's always kind of tough when you're in front of an expert policeman to talk about policing. But Chief, I'm going to tell you, I'm an advocate for neighborhood policing. And I believe that the more that we can incentivize our police officers to know their neighborhoods, the better we are. And so I would institute immediately a program to encourage police officers to live in the neighborhoods that they police. Because Leroy down the street might be a little off, and he might be standing in the street, and if a strange police officer comes in that doesn't know Leroy is just a little off, Leroy is not really dangerous, he's just a little off, then they may immediately suspect that he's dangerous for reasons simply because they don't know who he is. But just imagine, if the police officer is familiar with that person, Leroy, I know Leroy's a little off, Leroy's not dangerous, he's probably off his meds. I want to incentivize police officers to live in the neighborhoods, and while we can't do it legally, we can't require them to do that, we can incentivize them by paying them some incentive pay if they choose to live in the neighborhood. I would be such a mayor. Number 2, I believe we need more police officers than we presently have. Because it is unacceptable in this city for your property to be burglarized and have the police officers tell you we're too busy to even investigate. As your mayor, I intend to increase the number of police officers in the street. On the issue of potholes, some of my opponents in the mayor's race want to continue the pothole repairs with asphalt. That is a very old technology, and there is something that is immediately available that will help us repair potholes more quickly and more permanently. And that's called liquid asphalt. The last time I ran for mayor, I was one of the only advocate that said, look, there is this new technology we're not exploiting. It's called liquid asphalt. With 2 people on a truck, you drop liquid asphalt into the hole, it stabilizes within 3 hours. It's more permanent than asphalt, aggregate asphalt, and it immediately cures within 3 hours. That's a better way forward. And as your mayor, I intend to implement that immediately. Not only do you have potholes repaired more quickly, but more permanently and cheaper. So I asked on the campaign trail 2 years ago, why aren't we doing this? And the answer came back, well, Bubba has a big contract with the city with all this aggregate asphalt. And that's why we're not using the new technology. That's unacceptable. Taxpayers deserve the very best product, and as your mayor, I intend to give it to you and actually realize savings from that exercise. Then finally, pensions, because you're going to have a lot of candidates who are going to address the issue of pensions. And yes, we have about a $5 billion underfunded liability. But I want to make sure that we have some perspective here. When my wife and I came to Houston, Texas, baby, and we bought a house, I think it was $77,000. We had an unfunded liability of $77,000. We didn't have the ability to pay $77,000 when we first started. That's what we have in terms of the unfunded liability that we are encountering now. These are future expenses that we must pay and that we are going to actualize by annuitizing the money, monetizing it over time, and paying those obligations. There's no question we've been too aggressive in the past and made promises along pension promises that were imprudent. At the time, they were politically expedient, but they're imprudent now in terms of funding. But we can fund them. We have now too expansive a government, and we can, in fact, by shrinking government, City Hall, we have 23 departments now. I think we need no more than 11. Perhaps we could get to 12. But that's a savings instantly of $80 million. Now, I'm going to take Judon and Chris and Carole Robinson on to task on that issue, because I think that we can squeeze more money more efficiently out of the efficiency that we can attain by shrinking government as opposed to expanding. How did I do, Carl, in terms of time?
Time. How much time do you have?
Is it not working?
No, I got 15 minutes. What I would rather do now is have you ask me questions, especially about those 3 Ps or anything else that you might be interested in. Just understand that those are my 3 priorities. They're going to be policing, potholes, and pensions. Yes, ma'am, I saw a motion over
I was
there.
just waving at her, but I'll go back to the pensions. You said you're not doing it quite so dramatically as it's been done in the past, or drastically. What is your plan?
You're saying the pensions or the contributions, the promises?
Well, the pensions.
Okay, there's a layered approach when you talk about pensions. One is the legacy promises, those promises that were made in the past that have to be funded now on a going forward basis. Then you have the instant problem of the promises that we're making to city employees today, which we don't call legacy pension obligations. These are.
I want to say, when you get to this point, I didn't explain this, but how we ask questions, ask for recognition. Please tell the speaker who you are. And this didn't meet the press, so we don't have follow-ups. Okay? We try to give everybody a chance. I'm sorry, Mr. Hall, I just wanted you to know who was asking the question.
Thank you so much for that. Who is asking the question?
Shelley Kennedy, SEC.
So, going forward, there's no question that we cannot make the aggressive promises that we historically have made. But we still have the legacy obligations that have to be funded. And what is so taxing now, the pension obligation, all those legacy obligations. This year, it's projected that we're going to have a shortfall of about $20 to $28 million, depending upon whose numbers you're looking at. You're going to have to fund that because those promises have been historically made. The Constitution in the United Texas, as well as the United States, requires us to fund those. We can do that. I'm convinced we can. We have to tighten our belt on it. But there are opportunities to get that funding, reduce the expenditures going forward, and catch up on this legacy obligation. I'm committed to that, and I believe we can do it. You're going to have a lot of moaning by a lot of candidates, but anybody who comes to you and tells you a one-stop solution, like 401k, or some kind of matching fund, is not going to catch up the legacy obligation. I have a solution for both the legacy obligation as well as the curtailment of the present promises. Yes, sir.
I'm Scott Filling.
Yes.
I drive on streets that are under construction year after year. It doesn't seem to stop. For example, Hempstead Road, running from Main Road in town to West 12. They don't ever seem to get things finished, and often they seem to be repairing for the same place over and over again.
And I assume, Scott, you're asking the question, how can we stop the repetitive repairs? We're going to have it's a complex question because we do have substrata separation from the surface. In other words, we have this gumbo soil. In some places, the actual ground shrinks away from the strata. And as a result, you're going to have potholes and so on. There are ways to approach it. And we can't bankrupt the city by saying we're going to take away repetitive repairs. What we need right now is just to get repairs. Because, some streets don't even get repaired within a 6-month to 12-month period of time. We must address those problems immediately. There are 2 ways that we can address it. Well, there are at least 2 ways that I'm looking at to address it. We can mudjack streets without tearing up the asphalt. This open cut technology that we're using, that is, we cut into the asphalt, we put in, fill it back up, and then put asphalt back on, that is a primitive way of addressing street repairs. There is a way now where you can micro tunnel under the street, build back up the substrata so that it attaches to the roadbed, and it's just as stable going forward as it was originally. That's my preference. For those of you who may have paid attention to a recent lawsuit that we had where the city wanted to take up the slave bricks in Fourth Ward, well, I was the lawyer who represented the neighborhood to protect those slave streets. And one of the things that we found out is by using micro tunneling going underneath the street, you save the city at least 30% of cost, not what you're hearing out of the administration. You can save 30% of cost because you're not having to repair the asphalt that you had to cut into, build it back up, and put asphalt back down. You can go underneath the street, mud jacket, level the street, and it's a better way forward. So these new technologies are going to save us money from what we are now spending on street repairs, and at the same time, we can transfer those savings over to address pension liabilities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is William Pasota. And I noticed in your presentation you tiptoed around and failed to mention one of the most controversial issues that the city of Houston has faced recently, and one of the most preeminent civil rights issues of our day. And specifically I'm referring to equal rights for gay people, and specifically Houston's HERO Amendment. And I'd like to know where your stance is on that.
Sure. In fact, I didn't go around, I didn't even address it. So let me just.
No, you didn't.
Yeah, let me just address it. I am against the present version of the HERO ordinance. I'm for the goal that it seeks to achieve, but I'm against the present form. And let me tell you why. This version is a criminal statute. Now, a criminal statute, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in order to have a crime. But the definition of gender, as it presently is in the ordinance, cannot give you an objective standard. It's unenforceable as such. I do believe, however, we can keep most of the body of the ordinance, achieve the same goals of non-discrimination against gays, lesbians, transgender, transsexual individuals, and we should. But that language is not enforceable as a
Well,
crime.
all due respect, aren't you really arguing that separate is equal, which under Brown versus Board of Education, we clearly learned is not an acceptable standard for American society?
Well, the answer to your question is no, I'm not, because Brown versus Board of Education trying to define race as opposed to gender.
So race is your only protected category of American citizens who deserve equal protection under the law?
I think you failed to understand what I said.
No, I didn't.
I believe that we can protect gays, lesbians, transgender, transsexual individuals from discrimination, and I think that we should.
But in a separate manner.
Hold on, Matt. Please finish answering your question. While we must have that as a goal, it is a foolish goal if you can't enforce the law. And you cannot enforce that law. No judge is going to be able to enforce the HERO ordinance as a criminal statute. None. Now,
And what
I
are you basing
can,
that on?
because there's not an objective standard beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what a crime requires. A crime requires you to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this person is a male or this person is a female. You cannot achieve that under that ordinance. As a result, I would immediately modify the definition, because I do believe the goal of the ordinance is correct. I want you to hear that, I want you to hear that. The goal of the ordinance is correct.
So if you could change the definition of gender,
let me-
then you would be willing to support
Absolutely.
it?
I think that that's exactly the defect of the ordinance. That is the defect of the ordinance. And
Then,
you can.
as mayor, would you propose the same ordinance with a
absolutely-
different definition of gender?
I absolutely would.
All right.
And I've already said that. The point is, you cannot enforce a subjective ordinance. You have to have an objective ordinance in order for it to be a crime. You just have to. Now, some people may say, hey, that's not politically correct, and that's only because they choose not to listen to what I'm saying. I'm telling you that we can make that ordinance enforceable as a criminal statute but it must have an objective definition.
Well, I think people listen to what you said, but I think, in all due respect, people may disagree with your conclusion that the definition of gender is not something that courts aren't capable of interpreting.
Yeah, I will allow that. I will allow what you just said.
Right.
Any other questions?
Jalea Legault. Yes, well, I happen to be one of those people who had testified for that HERO ordinance, and I have to explain my own, because I'm an ally, I'm a straight person, and I'm also a Latina, and I felt like I was denied, my privilege to go to the restroom. This girl wanted me to go to the restroom with the child. I'm going, that's unprofessional of them to go and tell me to go to the restroom along with the child, right? I should be able to go to the restroom and take a 5-minute break. There's another teacher there. There's 2 teachers there. So I'm having to complain about it, saying, hey, there's something wrong here. And they're over here deeming me hostile because I wouldn't stood up for myself. I go, no, I don't think so. This HERO was not meant to be a criminal ordinance. It was meant to be an ordinance to protect any individual from stuff like this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have stood up there. It's not criminal at all. What people are doing is making false information and accusations out there about this ordinance. The only flaw that I see about this ordinance is that they took one important piece of that ordinance in regard to the restroom. Oh, I could tell you one thing too. Now the schools in Houston ISD did have multi-gender bathrooms. Hey, that's great for us women because we get to go and have one more restroom. That's great for us.
We need them.
That's it. Yeah, it's a luxury. There aren't any complaints there. So I don't see any issue about the ordinance. There's nothing supposed to be meant about that ordinance to be criminal at all.
And I think that if it were not a criminal ordinance, you'd have a better ordinance. But it is a criminal ordinance. And as your mayor, I would adjust that because I think that ordinance can be used effectively. It can be used more effectively as if you're going to have it as a criminal ordinance, we have an objective standard, or you have it as a civil ordinance, a civil law ordinance for enforcement purposes. Yes, sir.
Hey, I got an issue that I guess addresses, Steve Nolan, that addresses, I guess, all 3 Ps, as far as policing, free up police officers to go after more serious crimes. I got some stats here that I'll bring up. As far as pensions, it'll help raise more tax money to help cover any shortfalls. And as far as potholes, well, it's about pot, so otherwise known as marijuana. But I got the state statistics. I wasn't able to get them broken down to Houston, but 2012 there was over 72,000 arrests or citations for marijuana. 97% were for marijuana possession, and during that same year, 90% of all burglaries, 88% of motor vehicle thefts went unsolved by law enforcement. So, as far as freeing up law enforcement officers to go after more violent criminals, as Senator Whitmire says, we should go, concentrate on people we're afraid of, not necessarily people that we're mad at because of what they do. Also, as we've learned in Colorado, since they passed their bill, they're getting millions of dollars in tax money as far as doing that. We got a bunch of bills that's coming up on that. But also Devin Anderson, she's come out with, I guess, like a deferred adjudication program for simple possession. But anyway,
What's your question?
well, where do you stand as far as marijuana law reform?
Interesting. I didn't expect that question from what you were saying. I'm open to hearing discussion about medical, but I'm not open to just legalizing marijuana. I don't know what the chemical processes for medical marijuana use. I'm open to listening to that. I've heard the THC discussions about medical marijuana usage. But on the proposition that you've asked, I would not be an advocate for overall marijuana use or legalization of it in the city of Houston. I thought you were gonna go a different place, and that is, I think that the best policing is to prevent crime, not to chase it after it's happened. And so I'm an advocate for after-school use of police dollars for after-school activities for students, for kids, to prevent crime from happening, as opposed to then having to throw all the millions in to warehouse and find the criminals. Okay? Did I do okay, Carl?
You're doing
In terms
fine.
of time. In terms of
I know.